What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Slaughter podcast. And today I'm joined with my regular co-host, Charles. How's it going, man?
All right, man. What's happening, everybody? We've been away for a minute, but we're back and we're ready to go.
And I've also got Brett with me today. Say hi, Brett.
Hey, guys.
We have a very, very special guest. I'm excited to introduce Fabio on the podcast. It's been a long time coming, but I'm thrilled to have you. What's going on, man?
Hey guys, I'm thrilled to be here. Like we said just before we started recording, I've been waiting. I've been very excited, and I'm really eager to start recording with you guys as well.
The topic is pretty much the news that everyone's been seeing for the past couple months regarding the game. It's the big update, the 2021 update, going from 1.6 to 2021. There's been a lot of discussions about list building, testing, the new tactics deck. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to talk about for this podcast, but let's start off the conversation really easy. And I'll ask you, Fabio, how do you think it went? I'm sure there's a huge load off your shoulders because there's a lot of work that goes into coming out with an update with a game like this. But how do you think it's been so far?
So far, I'd say it's been pretty positive in a sense of not only having like you said, the load off my shoulders and for the whole team, but so we can look ahead, right? Because when we think of doing 2021, when we thought about doing the 2021 and updating tactics cards, all of that means that we need to stop and rewind and look back at this huge back catalog of stuff that we've created already, right? And rethink it and tune everything and homogenize wording. It's tough to do the 2021 edition and create new items and think about the future. So that was eating my time, like double time, right? And finally, we can just think about the future for now. So it's been a relief, and to be very honest, I'm very happy with the reception in general, and just the feedback in all. Like I'm really excited how passionate people are and getting eager for receiving these physical card packs and really trying to get into tournaments and everything once this pandemic is over, because I think we're close to the end. I don't want to jinx it, but
that's awesome. You mentioned the card packs. We recently saw the card packs, a picture of them online, which means they are coming. That's exciting news. Can you give a peek into sort of the initial testing? Was there a particular faction maybe by the end is totally different from what you thought it would be when you were writing the notes on what was going to change?
I think that during the process, the Targaryens were the ones that suffered the most changes. Where at the end we're like, this really wasn't what we were expecting. And just by changing things slowly through the playtest cycle, we finally reached a sweet spot. So all the commanders having 4 tactics cards was really, really interesting, and enabling the Stormcrows, which honestly to me is just a psychological thing for players, because you could basically do the same armies with exception of like the Dario Commander's 4th card. But I think that was the one that kind of caught me off guard the most, and I'm really happy with the results at the end of the cycle, right? And I think that now, much more than before, the Targaryens have a very, very unique identity, and you feel you're playing Targaryens, whereas before they had their identity, but it was a little bit more diffuse. Is that a word?
I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I'll say about the new Targaryens is if someone were to tell me a year ago that Targaryens would have some of the most varied options as far as list building, I would have said no, there's no way.
Yeah, I was going to make the same comment that conversations about any balance thing aside, I had told somebody the other day in chat that if there was one faction they were going to just main, buy everything for one faction, only play one faction, that I thought the most complete gaming experience right now probably is Targaryens, because the difference between like double pikeman lists and how they play versus like cav lists versus Mother of Dragons. No matter how you may feel about Mother of Dragons or whatever, because communities all over the place all the time. We're pretty bipolar about that. Targaryens by themselves is the most complete, I think, experience currently on the table in 2021.
I agree, and also it's interesting because you guys are naming these. I'd call them like list archetypes, but you can still mishmash them together. I think Mothers of Dragons is a little bit harder because of just the restrictions, right? You have a lot of points already soaked up into the dragons, but you can do a lot of hybrid lists, right? If you're playing Dario, that does not mean that you won't field some Dothraki units, for example, right? And I think that there's a lot of discovery still for players mixing up these archetypes.
Yeah, for sure. And I just kind of meant that in just like more for the listeners, right? Like you spend almost half my faction point, my list points are in this little synergy kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of sprinkling in there, and that's kind of what we meant by complete experience. Is like solo Jorah changes the list dramatically. One unit of Outriders, which I think is one of my favorite units in 2021. I think dramatically changes the list, right? And they're a cav unit, but they're not, right? They're this weird hybrid unit, which is really cool.
We've got Lord Commander Bob here in chat, and he said he loves Targs, even though he is a dedicated Night's Watch player. I've been playing a lot with Bob at our gaming shop, and he has been experimenting with Targaryens, and he says that their list building is so unique, and he loves the remove card from their deck. Whose idea was that? Having the extra commander card? Was that your idea, Fabio, or was that something that was agreed upon between the whole team? Or
the creative process has a lot of back and forth, and I would say it's kind of unfair to say it was this person or that person's idea, because like I don't remember when this came up, but if it comes up in a meeting and someone says it, right, even though they said it first, you still need to build on that. Like, our ideas are cheap, right? It's really how you build them. So it's a group effort for sure.
so for those that are maybe new to the game, new to this podcast, or this is their first time listening to you speak, you just give a brief synopsis of what your role is within the game.
Okay, so my name is Fabio Cury, if you haven't read the description, and I am a designer and senior developer at Call Me or Not. And my function in A Song of Ice and Fire is my role in A Song of Ice and Fire is being a developer. That means not only keeping the game balance in check, but also keeping the game consistent and fun, and kind of keeping control of the game quality, right, in general. So guaranteeing that there's a flow to the game, that it's not stalling, that we're not giving the right or wrong options for players to have analysis paralysis, where you spend too much time thinking because options are too similar amongst themselves, and it's really not just about game balance. So there's a lot in the job that involves keeping the game fun, right? I always say that. So the designer has these crazy whack ideas, and then the developer comes in and checks if they really function and if in reality they can be applied, right? Obviously, good designers don't just spit out ideas. They already come with ideas that can be implemented and are already being established. And Michael Schnall, which is the lead designer for this project, is amazing, and his ideas already usually come pretty solid. So that really gives me a lot of slack, right? And that's basically what I do. I think that was the question.
Yes, and that clears a lot up for me, just because I'm so far removed from the industry. I love the game, I love playing the game, but behind the scenes, behind the curtain is always good to have, especially when I'm talking about a game I love so much. So, speaking of the stuff that you have to do surrounding the game, is there anything that you like more than doing, something else? Let's say, like, do you like faction balancing more than taking a look at the rules and breaking things down? Like, what is your favorite part about that aspect of development?
More and more, I really get interested and I really want to partake in design. So I'm always nagging Michael in that regard. But to be very honest, I think as a developer, the thing I like the most is observing players. So it's really interesting to watch two people play. So I do enjoy playing A Song of Ice and Fire a lot, and I started out as a playtester, so I went there just because I found it was fun. But once you assume the role of developer and you start observing, I think there's a lot of magic in that to see, like, sometimes me as an observer, I look at the options on the table and I say, like, oh, I think the optimal choice would be to claim this zone or move this unit. And then the person does something completely different and you weren't expecting that. And it's very different because me as an observer, I have um, um, complete vision of what's going on. I know both players' tactics cards. I know which card is on top of each deck. So obviously the decisions I would make are very much different. And there's a lot of other interesting aspects, for example, that I have to keep in check. Like I said, making the game fun. So if I see a player pull their cell phone during a playtest match and like start scrolling while it's the other player's turn, I start getting all these alarms and triggers in my mind, right? Because something is going wrong. Because if it's the other player's turn, you should still be engaged. Even though you're not moving a tray, you should still be equally engaged in playing the game by observing your opponent. So I think that's really interesting, and that's has a lot to do with people and not really the game itself.
You said that you like watching people play. That makes me think that maybe you've come across our channel once or twice.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, once again, like I was excited to be invited by you guys because I do watch I can't say I've watched everything, but I've watched a lot of your stuff.
That sort of makes me paranoid a little bit now because I know that I've never had a perfect match where I'd gotten like a rule thing wrong or some kind of stat wrong. But I'm gonna try not to think about that in future episodes and tell myself like, oh, Fabio could be watching, because I think that'll just make it a lot worse.
Now the question is, has Fabio heard Bob play trumpet?
That's an
Can't say I
inside joke, and
haven't.
we don't scare Fabio away. We don't want to scare Fabio away.
He must have skipped that episode.
I've done plenty of talking so far, and I do have a co-host, Charles, and he is a lot more articulate. He spends a lot of time thinking about the game and rules and, different tactics. So, I'd like to throw it out there to Charles or Brett. Is there anything that you would like to sort of discuss with Fabio while we have him on?
Just thinking in general, obviously, I think the community knows for the most part by the rule book that Fabio and I worked together in playtesting the 2021. So I have my opinions on it. I just want to hear Fabio's opinions on it to kind of see what he thinks. As far as navigating from like the 1.6 to the 2021 change, how important do you think it is for the community to really like break their mold and really like reset their mind? Do you think that that's a thing, or do you think almost everything translates over? Or do you think it's different enough that people need to kind of approach it as a whole new game? I guess that's the question. Do you see 2021 as a whole new game worth exploring from the very beginning? Or do you think it's okay to take concepts from 1.6 and carry those over?
I think that the core A Song of Ice and Fire experience has been unaltered, and you're still going to have a lot of fun and the same sort of fun that you had before. But if you're talking about, once again, players that already know how to play the game and they already have knowledge of certain interactions, I think that players should, in a sense, reset their expectations and try to rediscover.
Yeah, it's like you're saying, like fundamentally, the core game hasn't changed dramatically, but because all the units are effectively variables, they've all changed. We should be back at the experiment table, really trying to explore those variables again.
Exactly. And from what I've noticed, and just in general, right? And we can't be everywhere at once. And certainly I am not, but I was expecting a little bit more experimentation from just players and just in general from social media feedback.
So let's talk about that a little bit. That leads into one of my questions is what sort of things, be it list decisions, like maybe it's little combos in a faction you thought would be more popular, or a certain game feel you thought people would approach for, like um, mechanically versus say castling or brick formats versus like all cav, all gas versus that. What types of combos or synergies or player experiences you expected to be more common this edition than maybe what you're seeing? And are there any that surprised you that you were like, man, people really leaned into this and we didn't think that that was going to be what they latched onto quite like they did, kind of thing?
So first, we get a good feel of the water with playtesters. So when we released like the 2021 to our pool of playtesters, usually when you show something new to a playtester, the first thing they think is, I'm going to spam this and see if it works, right? Regardless of who the person is, if you show something new, they're going to say, I'm going to spam this and see if it works.
Yeah.
But after that, they do start experimenting. So I'd say that for now, there is nothing that I've seen that really caught me off guard of like, I didn't expect people to do that. Because for now, since these updates are still very recent, and they may not seem so because we've been like slowly spoiling and building hype, but they are very recent, right? The faction packs haven't even reached people's houses. Right now, people are mostly still trying to not trying to figure out, but they've just figured out the archetypes that we've already pre-established, right? So, of course, if you look at Khal Drogo, you do think like, oh, I am going to make this Dothraki cavalry list, right? And that's an archetype that we knew ahead of time, for sure, right? I didn't say, oh my god, I can't believe you put Drogo on veterans. Who would have thought of that? So currently, I'm not surprised. I do think that there's a lot of experimentation to be had, right? And a lot of the playtesters in the 2021 playtest cycle did experiment, and there's a lot of stuff that they did find and do that I haven't seen yet.
Okay.
Interesting. I feel
Now-
like that's a call to action. It's
Maybe.
like there's definitely some stuff that is that still needs to be uncovered here. So
Yeah, you got like a secret tech hint that was one of your favorite things to play when testing that you think might be a little undervalued, like it's a sleeper pick. You have like a sleeper pick for like a MVP unit combo or something. Any faction?
If I did, I wouldn't say so, because that would skew everyone into trying that out, right?
I had to try.
I've got a question here, and it's basically this game is something that can satisfy different types of gamers, such as those that like to do the lore stuff and do the thematic battles, and then you also have like the hobby side where there's those that really enjoy painting the models and seeing those on the table, and then you have diehard competitive war gamers. And on the other side of that spectrum, you have the newbies to the genre that, like myself, this is my first war game. Which one of those gamer types do you describe yourself as? And is that a consideration when you're making changes for the update? Is looking at those different gamer archetypes and saying this should be good enough for everyone involved with the game?
That's a good question. No one's asked me that yet. Okay, so I'd say that when we make changes, and when I say changes, I mean like adding new units, releasing new stuff, or just everything, right? When we are in the creative process, we do have to keep that into consideration for all aspects. I would say that since we have pre-assembled models in trays, I think that the hobby people are, I don't even want to say less catered, because I do think the miniatures are beautiful, and I do think that the movement trays open up a lot of space for hobbying and just like conversions and building and doing the bases. There's a lot of room there, but That's really in the production aspect. But the other, like you said, the newbies, the competitive players, the thematic players, those three are really the pillars of design and development, right? We do have to cater for everyone, and I can't say there's one that we take into consideration above the others, right? I'd say that this is a pretty friendly game for newcomers. And I think that that also has to do with the fact that the miniatures are pre-assembled and you can really open the box and play. So that in itself is already, for me, a really good approach for newcomers. And having a 35-page rule book is also amazing for newcomers, right? Like if usually when you play war games, you look at these daunting uh, blocks of rule books, right? And here, because of the short rule book and the unit cards, really do make it good for newcomers. But that's something that I don't really need to think about that much, right? And something that really helps me is that I can only put so many abilities into a unit before that card runs out. So I can't really cheese myself and add all these crazy things to a unit and
Right.
and make it not newcomer friendly. On the second hand, keeping a balance between, it's not even a balance, it's catering to thematic players and competitive players is is not really as hard as you'd expect, because if you make um once again these archetypes for a start, then you're already catering to thematic players, right? If people want to play a Tully list because they really like Brendan the Blackfish, or something like that, they can, and that's already built in for them. I'm not going to make it that each Tully unit is not synergic with the other Tully units. That would be really unfair for these thematic players. So that already helps me out. So we have a lot of hacks and shortcuts that we do that help us cater for everyone. And myself, I do see myself. I, I was a competitive player for war games most of my life, but the more I've played, the more I've wanted. Slowly, I'm becoming a more thematic player. That doesn't remove my competitive nature, but I do prefer having lists that I look at it and I have an emotional attachment to it. Like, Catelyn Stark means something to me now. I used to hate her in the books, and now I love her in the game. And slowly, we're building a relationship.
So along those lines, in the design process, right? Like you said, like it's kind of a creative team. It goes through a lot of different steps. And I know in one of the podcasts, Michael mentioned sometimes there's like a creative lead for certain little parts of a faction design and things like that, just to kind of help you out manage the teams in general. Like somebody's gonna be a point man to a degree in a conversation. How do y'all kind of balance out? Um, the game feel and power levels and stuff you're looking for across all factions with that many hands in the pie. Like, for instance, you mentioned like Tully's working together. Brendan Tully has Tully affiliation. He has a few cards that care about them, but like some very minor bonuses, most people would say, for Tully affiliation. But then you have some fairly powerful effects in some cases, maybe in the um, Clegane, getting charged of the tactics board equivalents with those keywords and things like that being a thing. How do you kind of keep those in perspective together? Like conversation wise, like do y'all kind of have like a point buy system, like almost like D&D where like, all right, this is really good. It's like 3 points. Like you can't go over 5 for like a kicker, like how do you just kind of talk about it creatively? I'm not trying to say like, oh, this is not balanced, but like how do those conversations happen when you have your roundtable meetings? Like how do you brainstorm?
Okay, so now that we have a lot of backlog of just information and cards, and there's a lot of things that have been released, we have a good ballpark of how strong a card should be, how strong a unit should be, and how many points does an ability cost, right? And then you have things that change that. So some abilities might, I'm gonna put this in giant air quotes, right? But
Yeah, we feel you.
might cost more for one faction and less for the other, right? So once again, like mobilities in Stark is cheap. Mobilities in Baratheon is a little bit more expensive. Something like in that line, right? And
10,000
then we
Baratheon players just cried out into the darkness of space.
Well, but that's the thing. Like armor comes cheap for Baratheons, right? And sustain. There's a trade off there, right? And if everyone had everything, then why would you choose a faction?
Yeah, I feel you.
So we right now, I think like through experience and just sheer exhaustive playtesting, we've acquired a good rule of thumb. And that doesn't mean that, okay, I suggest something and then Michael says, okay, that's done, let's go. No, then we extensively playtest, right?
Mhm.
And really, I think that's mostly it. Like if someone is really passionate about a certain unit or character, then they'll have a crack at it first. And if it works, great. And then we extensively playtest, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, if it's a unit that really no one cares about, I won't name any,
Yeah.
then we'll follow the proper pipeline and flowchart, and then obviously extensively playtest. So there is a pipeline and there is a flowchart of who should do what. But once again, being a creative process, there's a lot of back and forth. So
That's
it
cool.
varies. It is really case by case.
That's fair.
So it's an exciting time for the game because we're constantly seeing new units come out. We're getting new toys to play with, and I just wonder how that affects the design space that you're given. With the game, like are you able to sort of foresee like the direction a faction will go if you release this particular type of unit or attachment or affiliation?
So I'd say that this is almost 6 years ago now. I wasn't even at CMON because I've been there for 3.5 years. I'm not sure. Maybe four. But basically, when the game was conceived, right, most of the factions were planned ahead for years and years and years. So their design space and these affiliations were sort of sorted out, like even if it was just like a couple of sentences, right? So like, yeah, Boltons will work off of fear and panic tests, right? Or something like that.
Mm.
That already sets the precedent. So we don't really get caught on the spot without planning, right? There's a lot of planning going into this, right? And once we reach, like, there's never been a point where I've looked and said, "Oh, we've done all the units. What's next?" Right? When we're halfway through the units we have, once again in air quotes, right? Because it's not really how this works. There's like we're always doing lots of things through of various steps of the pipeline. So I'm always like I'm developing, but I'm also in coordination with the production team. So we know what's coming out in 2024, 2025, and so on. So I sort of have foresight of what's to come. Therefore, I'm never
Gotcha.
caught off guard in that sense.
Right. That makes sense.
Right? Like who would figure that we plan stuff?
Okay. So for those who are listening, we got quite a few nice tournaments coming up, to include U.S. Nationals coming up and a couple other major events. I know Brett's working on an announcement for some Gen Con stuff with the London GT coming up, which is going to be awesome over there in the UK. We've also got an interesting like quarterly event naming announced from there's some guys out of Alabama at Rocket City Games. So with tournaments trying to fire back up, and the new errata and FAQ that just came out, we got a lot of people who still have quite a few questions and stuff. And I know you guys mentioned that you're still going through some stuff and you're going to update the FAQ as needed and as new units come out. But is there a good, better, best way of getting the frequently asked questions from like TOs and stuff like in front of you guys? Like in the past, we had the forums, Is that still where you would like us to go for, say, like game mode rulings and things like that?
I do believe that officially, yeah, the forums are the best place for you to go because they are, once again, specifically when we say forums, we mean the CMON forums. And we do keep an eye out in social media in general. Of course, that's not ideal because can't be everywhere at once. You can also try reaching out our customer support, which once again, I don't believe that they'll answer you specifically for a Song of Ice and Fire with rules clarifications, but that means that those clarifications will get to us.
Okay. Okay. So there's a couple
But once again, I
avenues.
think like the best place is still the Simon forums, right?
Yeah, because I asked a question because, like for instance, Carl, who's one of our patrons in chat here, he's compiled a lot of like Discord's major questions, Facebook's major questions, and put them on the forums. But it's been quite a while since we've had like official activity and stuff, so I just wasn't sure if that was like an official part of the program still, or kind of with all the hustle and bustle of 2021, you guys have been pretty deep in the tank trying to hit those deadlines you mentioned. I mean, I'm sure you guys got a ton on deck still because COVID is still messing up a lot of your cycle too, I'm sure. Um, so that was just kind of the question there, especially with all these events coming up, with people getting real excited about getting back to the table.
Yeah, I just signed up for the tournament that was just announced in Indianapolis at Family Time Games. So I hope to see Brett there. And I heard there may be an appearance by some folks from CMON. Are you planning on going, Fabio?
Unfortunately, I won't, but I won't. But I do believe that there will be Simon staff there. I'm not sure. I can't really say this officially, so don't call me out on it. But
Sure.
I know that it is endorsed by Simon.
People being able to slowly start playing again, starting to put their miniatures back on the table. What can they be excited about regarding this back to play kit from CMON?
I can't really comment on that, but we have a lot of cool things coming up. I just don't really even know like the timetables, etc., because that's still really confusing because of the whole global pandemic that exists around there.
Sure.
And also because once again, since that's not really my department, we do coordinate with each other, but I'd avoid stepping on anyone's toes.
And that's fair.
So Charles, do you have anything else on your list of questions that you want to sort of throw out there?
We've covered a lot of them in a roundabout way, and most of the questions after that would be kind of nitpicky. I think Fabio's actually gave us a pretty gracious peek behind the curtain, just kind of how they handle business, which I'm pretty grateful for across the board here. Um, But yeah, so as Bob keeps asking, so yeah, guys called it 2021, right? Because I wanted to put a pin in it as like a major, not to say reset, but a turning point in the game's rule cycle and release cycle. Is there a particular reason that y'all have specifically avoided 2.0 or something like that from like maybe a mechanical versus say a branding perspective?
So the rules didn't change, or they changed really slightly. Oh, now there's a tactics hand limit. We tightened wording, but the core rules are still the same. So it would be unfair to the game. It would be confusing to consumers to call it a 2.0, right? It's not a whole new game, right? It's just an update on units and cards.
Yeah.
So I believe that escaping that version system that we were doing, like 1.1, 0.2, 0.6, etc., that calling it just season 2021, or I don't even know if we use the word season, just calling it 2021 really clarifies that this is the timestamp on it. It may go on indefinitely, and it is not a new version, right? If we called it 2.0, I believe that then there would have to be like core rule changes and things like that, and that's not really the point. And I think that calling it 2021 helped clarify what the intent was, or at least I hope so.
Yeah. And to grab onto something you said, seasons here. I know we updated the game modes for 2021, but even those were really slight changes in kind of just the introduction of the beta game modes as official game modes that we had early. In your design funnel, no spoilers or anything, but like is, say, a new season of game modes, like more of an actual rotation, like we're pulling some of these out and we're putting in a good chunk back in. Is that something you guys are kind of developing for the like health and longevity of, say, the competitive side of things a little bit, like spice it up? Like we might just take out, Dance with Dragons and Clash of Kings. They've been out for a while, and a few other ones, and put in like juice it, like 4 new ones where it's an actual new competitive season of game modes.
We could. Is that enough of an answer? I can't
Yeah,
really go much further.
yeah. So
This
it's
is
like it's cool. Yeah, it's maybe on your radar, and you could, and it's a cool idea. I'll take that as a win for me personally, because I like that. I like seasonal spiciness. Even if it's every 2-3 years, you get a major tournament packet update, right, where the objectives and scenarios rotate out, and then a whole new batch runs in, because that's another good way to like cleanse how people play the game, because it's we approach the mechanics differently at that point, which would be super cool.
So I'd even dare say, I'm if I'm not mistaken, the beta game modes, not all of them made the cut.
No.
I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys remember.
there's like 1 or 2 I think that didn't make it in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I dare say that there are more game modes that you haven't seen that even didn't make the cut for the beta game modes.
Yeah, that's
If
exciting.
that makes sense. So I'm not saying we will or we won't, but we could. That's kind of my answer.
Yeah, put on your brainstorm board. You can give us a shout out whenever you do it. It'd be cool. I'll give you that one free. You even gotta give me a shout out for it. Just go ahead and run with it. You know what I'm saying? Just put a pin in it.
Yeah, once again, ideas are cheap. So
Yeah.
So me personally, I could talk to Fabio, for another hour or two, but I want the door open for Fabio to return. So I'm going to save a handful of these questions for the potential return of Fabio, the sequel. But I would like to maybe end with the question of what are you excited for on the horizon regarding the game? I know starting out the podcast, we talked about how it's sort of like a relief that the update is now out into the world. People are enjoying it, but what are you excited for? And can you maybe give any teases of what's to come?
So I'd say I'm really, really excited for the faction packs to reach people's houses. I do believe that once you touch the cards, it really changes the way you view the game, and it's really just much more fun to play in person and touch your toys. Right? That's the thing I'm most excited about, and I'm really eager to see like pictures of people playing and things like that. As I can't really go on to like spoilers or anything like that. I still think that 2021 is very, very fresh, and I'm excited to see how everything consolidates once the dust settles down. Because once again, I do believe there's a lot of experimentation that is still to be done. So I'm more curious of what people will discover of what already exists than, or I wouldn't say more, but I'm equally curious of to see what people are going to do now than to see how they will hype for things that are to come.
What two commanders would you like to see pitted up against each other in a future battle report? Because I can make that happen.
Throwing your weight around. Ugh.
I do have the power to make this happen.
Okay, I feel very privileged. I give me a quick second. I'll pick the tough ones.
Sure, absolutely. While Fabio thinks about that, Charles, are there any closing shout outs that you would like to put out there while we close out the show?
Yeah, I'm gonna run down the tournaments again, guys and gals. A lot of these you can find on Song of Ice and Fire stats, and then some of these you can find through various pinned Facebook posts. But we got tournaments on deck if you're feeling comfortable at Back to Play IRL in the States. You've got the new U.S. Nationals announcement out of Family Time Games out in Indy. You've got Gamers Haven has their event coming up that Lord Commander Bob is throwing. Check them out on stats. They do have some list stipulations, so make sure your lists are legal. And then we've also got Rocket City Games out of Alabama is planning a quarterly event. They've already announced their October date. Just so you guys can kind of plan ahead and monitor the the pandemic and how it may or may not affect your travel. And then also the London GT is got their like they've sold 60 plus tickets already for their Song GT out in the UK. So if you're a European listener, there's still a little bit of time. You can get one of the last 2 or 3 tickets left. And they also announced an open event on Friday that's a bit more of a casual event. So you can catch them on Stats, obviously. But yeah, those guys are putting on some events and trying to get it back on the table and create a healthy gaming environment. So give them a shout and give them a check out and go from there. Oh, and Brett, stay tuned for announcements from Brett and them on Gen Con. Something is going to happen regardless, come heck or high water for him. He's determined to make a song a good time at Gen Con itself, but he's still working out the details with Gen Con officially.
And I'll sort of piggyback off of your shout out, Charles, and say that first off, our old West Coast bannerman just said that Game Castle in Sacramento on August 28th, they have 16 players already. That's awesome. But also a shout out to Bob, who is co-organizing the event at Gamers Haven here in Ohio. I'll have him sort of pop into chat here to sort of talk about what's going to be happening.
Hey guys, yeah, it's been a while. I haven't been on the podcast in a while, but yeah, we have 26 players already. We're like squeezing players in on tables, renting tables to get some more space out. If anybody is still interested in joining, I could talk to the owner and see if we might be able to rent some tables out. It is a $20 entry fee, and we are going to have 4 rounds. It's going to be registration starting at 9 a.m. It is on the 22nd. It's a Sunday, so come in Saturday night. I know there's a few guys coming in and going out to some of the breweries and stuff in the area in Cleveland. But yeah, come on in and just hit me up if you guys are interested in joining and making the trip in. We might be able to work out some more spots if we can find a place to rent some 4x4 tables. But I was pretty surprised how quick it filled up. It was cool because I was able to contact a lot of the players that came to our tournament last November. And we actually had 20 players last November, which was kind of crazy. We tried to stay as spread out as we could and everyone with their masks on and everything. But it was an awesome tournament. And most of those guys are coming back with friends. So it filled up super fast and we almost had to turn a couple players away. But we're trying to make room for more. So yeah, definitely hit me up if you are interested in attending and we'll see what we can do. And
yeah, and shout out to Bored to Death, right? The Pittsburgh crew. He's got some Pittsburgh boys come out there to see you, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. We gotta represent Cleveland here. We gotta trash them like the Browns did the Steelers in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, we'll there's gonna be some smack talk going on there, I'm sure. But it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, a little preseason trash talk, and yeah. But any of those Steel City boys and gals that want to play and realize there's a healthy community across city there, that's a good shout, I think, to show some healthy rivalry down the block.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours, 2-hour drive from Pittsburgh. We got some Detroit players, Buffalo, Indy, Dayton. So all around the area, everyone within maybe like 4 hours are a bunch of people coming in. So
yeah, if y'all didn't live in like Narnia, I'd come play. But y'all basically live in the Arctic Circle, as far as I'm concerned. So
all right. So Fabio, we're circling back to you. We're going to close out the show with your shout outs. But before we get your shout outs, you had a little time to think about the 2 commanders for a future battle report. Did you come up with anything?
Yeah, for the lack of 2, I'll give you 4, and then you'll pick the ones you want.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, so Axel Florent, first of the Queensmen. I think he's a good choice to see a battle report.
Nice.
Vargo Hote, the goat of Harrenhal, I think is also a great choice.
Ooh, but what faction? In what faction, though?
Well, I want to see a Bloody Mummer list.
There we go. Now we're talking.
All right.
Yeah, you gotta make it hard on Chris. You can't give him easy. Be like, I'm gonna give you a neutral commander to put in whatever faction you want. No.
Oh no.
In neutrals.
You can even put it in whatever faction you want, as long as it's a Bloody Mummer list, right? And then you'll try to fit in the rest. Because even if you do choose Vargo in neutrals, you'll have to put other things, right? I'm not expecting all of your units to be Bloody Mummers.
Now let's go. Zorses. Let's go.
I'm already thinking about it. All right, so that's 2.
That's 2, and then Rattle Shirts, the Lord of
Yes.
Bones. I think he is Rattle Shirt is just one shirt that rattles. So yeah, the Lord of Bones. He for sure he's one that I actually enjoy playing myself. Not because of like power level or anything. I just like the way he looks, and it's an amazing miniature. And the last one, I'd say the Weeper, Horrific Butcher, because I really like remorseless examples, and
That's such a great card. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd love to see that on a battle report.
Cool. Well, I've got my notes here, and I am definitely excited. I will probably end up playing Axel because I love the Lord Faithful, and I've got several units painted of those, so I'm all about putting those on the table. And then Rattleshirt, of course, he just fits my playstyle to a T. So these are all great choices, and I appreciate the suggestions here. And then lastly, Fabio, do you have any shout outs that you want to put out there to the world?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to, I'd say, all the 2021 playtesters, because they did an amazing job, and we really had a ball, in the previous couple of years. So it was really interesting, and I learned a lot from them, not only gameplay wise, but also like um, making friends.
Great. Brett's never gonna let us live that down. Thanks a lot.
I gotta say, I had a lot of fun, Fabio, having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time, sort of answering our questions and giving us a peek behind the curtain. I hope to have you on again at some point in the future. So yeah, thank you. A big thank you from me, sure, my co-host Charles, and the patrons that I have who were able to listen in live. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, thank you. And funny enough, I know most of your patrons by name, so thank all of them for being here.
Absolutely, we'll do that. And yeah, I hope you, as the audience, enjoyed this podcast. Stay tuned for more battle reports, more podcasts featuring Fabio. We'll have him on again. And with that, we are out.